All right, we're back with game three. And before we get into this one, in which Delhi has technically changed hands, which loses me a bet, but in practice not changed hands because he switched from 7-5-5-4 or 7-4-5-5 to 7-5-5-4. Um, Midas's hand changed more interesting. We'll get to that. But I wanted to mention on the last game, because I was talking a little bit about how easy it is to just not see something, right? Or just blank on something. And a really cool move, if you go back and look at the last game, on move 4, when Delhi played 6-7-6-3 and 8, I was saying he should play 5-5-7-4 and 3. And I was deeply wrong. That move was losing. And from what Delhi sent me during that game, he had not even been like considering going there. But it looked so obvious. It's safe. It locks in two. How could this not be great? But in fact, it was losing to 7-3-7-3 in 9, which is a super cool move. And if you go back and look at that position, I'm not going to bring it up right now. The key problem for Delhi is if he goes in 6 with anything other than 7-4-5-5, he accidentally combos 9 and gets comboed back in 8. But if he uses 7-4-5-5, then he can't use that in 1 and 4, and 6-7-6-3 sweeps him over there. So he's either going to die going in 6 to a combo from 8, or he's going to die in 1 and 4, and he can't avoid both. Super cool line, totally missed it. My evaluation was way off, and if he had followed my advice, he would have lost that game. So this is to say, we all we all have our blindnesses, and my blindness was a lot worse than his. All right. So we get a sort of mirrored hand from Delhi. We get Midas being the second player after Seto to move off of the 6-7-6 concept, right? He's our second player not to play the Behemoth Twins. You can see he's stuck with Iron Giant and surrounding cards. Though amusingly, each game that he sets up with a clear, here's a card for 5, and then here's some surrounding cards, he does not get first turn. And the one game he doesn't run a hand like that, this is game 3, he does, he does get first turn. So, but we can see like 6-5-6-5, the other cards are meant to play off it, right? 7-5-4-5 snags some 6s and 7s off the 5s to the side. The 6-5-3-7s pick up a bunch of 7s facing towards the 6s. It's a reasonable build, and I think it's quite similar to something Seto did. Let's actually, what are the Seto hands? Yeah, so Seto ran a little differently here. He ran 3-5-7-5 and 7-5-3-5, which using 2 gaps are more aimed to take 7s off the 5s rather than potentially 6s. And he did use the Behemoth Twins that game. No, he didn't. Sorry, Turds used those. What did Seto use? Is this the hand Seto ran? Yes. I think Seto used this hand in game 2 against Turds. That doesn't mean they, planned it together. It doesn't mean Midas saw it and decided to use it because this is a reasonable hand to end up with. Though, of course, all those things are completely fair game. But I do think this is a hand that could easily become 2 independently, much like all the 6-7-6 hands could easily become 2 independently. There's just not that much range of possible hands here. But this is one really trying to play off Iron Giant's numbers. So if you're Delhi, I would really keep in mind with whatever starter is played, like, you don't want Iron Giant in 5 to be a good reply. Not because, like, that's necessarily going to be incredibly devastating or anything, but just because I think Midas is looking to play Iron Giant in 5, and you want to make the move your opponent is drawn to playing, right? The move they're most likely to play in a vacuum. Not a good move. All right, we get our first side starter of the round, not of the tournament. I think our second of the tournament. What's going on here? This is clunky to recapture. All right, so I think the main line has to be 7, 5, 4, 5, and 7. Um, you might say 7 and 9 are interchangeable, but I think forcing the opponent to have to recapture is usually a powerful effect, right? Like it just limits the cards they can use. So like if Deli wants to recapture in 9, he has 2 choices instead of if he doesn't have to recapture in 7, he has 4 choices. And maybe there's a case for like give your opponent more options because it's easier for them to confuse themselves. But in general, I think you want to limiting their options makes it easier for you to calculate in useful ways. So I would start with looking at 7, 5, 4, 5 and 7. Midas plays in 1 and 3, I believe, a lot more than I do in these positions. But here, the safety and that Deli doesn't have corresponding safety is an interesting effect. And then, really importantly, if Deli goes in 9 and you play 4, 5, 7, 5, and 6, Deli doesn't have the combo in 5, which means we really have to check, does he have a big setup in 2? Is there some way he can set up in 2 that's just really scary for that? And the answer is probably yes. If Deli plays 6, 3, 6, 7, and 2, 5, 6, 5, 6, and 5 might be really strong. It might not be. There's some combo back potential. Um, all right. Midas takes the standard move, and I'm not sure what Deli's planning here. Nothing looks clean. Actually, and my idea was 6, 3, 6, 7, and 5, setting up Galagros in 2, setting up Galagros in 5. So you go 9, they go 6, you go 2, setting up 5. But my point earlier actually negates that, right? Because one of 6, 3, 6, 7 or 5, 6, 5, 6 is going in 9. It's also hard not to block 5, right? If you go 9 and they go 6, they create a threat in 5. The fives are playing off each other well in Midas's hand. 4, 5, 7, 5, and 6 sets up a threat in 5. So I think Deli has to block 5 there. Now maybe this just holds. Maybe it just technically holds. Um, but I'd be scared. And the threat in 5 of 6, 5. So if Deli goes 9 and Midas goes 6, he has a threat in 5, but not only does he have a threat in 5, if he lands 6, 5, 3, 7, and 5, it doesn't set Deli up in 4. 4 is dead for Deli. This seems very dangerous to me. Um, this feels very dangerous. I would guess at this point, Midas is more likely to win the game than tie. And maybe I'm missing some clean line. But if we think what cards can Deli even block 5 with well, he probably needs 6, 7, 6, 3 to block 5 to not set Midas up a ton. Maybe 6, 3, 6, 7 can block 5. That might be a little more promising. Okay, so like 5, 6, 5, 6, 9, 4-5-7-5-6, 6-3-6-7-5. You're down 6-4, but Midas can't play so well in 3, and your 5-4-7-5 is decent. It might just still be a loss to like 4 there, though. Ugh. I don't like this at all. This is really dangerous to my eyes. If Midas wins this, then I think Midas has played a really um, technically professional tournament so far, right? I think he's seen two weak starters and taken advantage and played really cleanly against them if he pulls out this game. Which is not to say he's necessarily winning here, but it's very promising. And in other games, he's taken positions that were a little difficult, but the second game here against Delhi, I think, is probably his most impressive game. Because after his 5 starter, I thought Delhi played a fantastic move in 2. And he had 28 moves, and 7 of them were ties, but it's the kind of 7 that are like, the ties look so similar to the losses, it's hard to differentiate. Like saying there are 7 ties sounds less impressive than if I say there are like 2 or 3 ties. But I think this was a case where it was just really hard to play a non-losing move. And yeah, I think Midas has played really well so far. Okay, so Delhi goes with the I can't interact with the board profitably move. Now, I didn't think about this move at all, but it makes a ton of sense to consider because it is just safe, right? He has drawn the 7 out of Midas's hand, and now he has safety. Um, so now what? This actually raises my odds substantially of Delhi holding the game because interacting with the board seemed really bad to me, and I hadn't really started looking at moves that didn't interact with the board. But if he had to interact, this was real scary. Okay, so one thing to note is Midas has a lot of options here. He can go 5, right? He could play something like Iron Giant in 5, a move we know his hand is happy to make. It doesn't set up Delhi in 4, and it sets up multiple threats against Delhi's starter. And fairly powerful ones, too, right? Reasonably high numbers facing out. So 5 is a real option here. 5's kind of rare in these structures, but 5 is definitely a real option, the setup option. 9 and 4 are more standard. Delhi did use up one of his only captures in 9. And as long as you have Iron Giant in your hand, well, no, sorry, his capture is now Galagros. It's hard to cover Galagros. So if you could play something that only Galagros responds well to, then Galagros is overworked in Delhi's hand. Not sure there's a way to take advantage of that, though. I'd be looking at 5 here. Is there anything you can do in 9? 9's a little clunky. Vid is interested in 6, which is like often the move you want structurally here, but usually it's because it captures 3. And makes it like you have combo responses to their captures, but you don't really. Okay, Vid didn't mean to say 6; he meant to say 4. That makes more sense. Yeah, 4, 9, and 5 I think are the key moves. Now I will note, Midas is one of the players on the planet who has the highest rate of going in 1 in this type of setup. There are like multiple games on record of him doing something like that, and 1 is not necessarily wrong. So I would just throw out, I think it's very unlikely, but I would throw out, if there was anyone who was going to play in 1 here, Midas would be a good pick. for a player to guess would go 1. Um, yeah, 4 looks strong. I'm not really seeing anything in 9, so I think 4 or 5 is probably where you want to be. I'm a little drawn to 5 because it feels like 4 blocks in a card that like Deli's never going to be able to capture anyway. So I would like 4 to do something in itself, which is, not that hard an ask. A lot of stuff there can set something up. But that's why I'm a little drawn to 5, is because maybe it's my draw towards interactive moves. Um, but going in 5 feels a way to interact usefully, and it's a move Iron Giant in 5 that we've kept in mind, right? Now, the one thing is it doesn't set you up against Galagros in 9. It would be really nice to set up against 3 while setting up against Galagros in 9. Is there a way to do that? Probably not. Okay. Well, I can't have everything. And that actually probably makes 5 not very good. Because if you go 5 and they go Galagros in 9, you probably have to go 6. Deli doesn't have 6, but he does have 2. So you're blocking the square he doesn't have to give him the square he does have. Yeah. All right. So that's not the way. So probably Vid is right. You probably want to go 4 here. Vid's not mentioning 6-5-3-7 and 5. Uh, I was thinking 6-5-6-5. Maybe 6-5-3-7 is the better way to do it. Just fully setting up Iron Giant. That does make a lot of sense. And Midas goes. Midas goes 6. Okay. I think Deli should hold now. I think you play Galagros in 9. I think we're going to need a 5 to the left, and we're not going to want a 6 to the left. Because we're going to need 6. Because specifically the line I'm looking at is Galagros 9, 6-5-3-7-5, which will keep Midas up 6-4. And then we can play 5-4-7-5 and 2. And because of that 5 to the left, we control 6s facing up. And Deli might even win there. I'll send this at vid, make sure I'm not being an idiot. Six seven six three is really good in that endgame. Well, at the same time I said this looks like it could be a win for Deli, Vid says he thought this was a horrible move. There's so many lines where a behemoth can turn into a monster, and it's a pretty forcing line, right? That's point Vid is making, not me, though he used different words. But let's see what Deli has to say. Also, if Deli now wins this game, it would be funny that this is the game I predicted. Like, all right, Vid mentions 3-7-6-5 and 1 after 9. Yeah, that could work. I want 5 4 7 5 2 there. Yeah, no, 5 4 7 5 2 should beat that, right? So the line I'm looking at is Galagros 9, 3 7 6 5 1, 5 4 7 5 2. The score's 5 5, so if they go in 4, you go 5 and you take 6 and you win because they didn't take anything. So they must go 5. And if they go 5, say with Iron Giant, they go up 7 3, but you go 6 7 6 3 and 4. That doesn't flip 7, but it does flip 1 and 5 and combos through 1 to flip 2. Right, he has not picked. Oh my god. Deli never does what we expect. 5 4 7 5 in 2. Not immediately sure this is good or bad or anything. Like let's. Last time I thought Deli had made a big mistake. He had avoided losing. I thought Galagros 9 looked close, and Deli sent a message saying so damn close. So Deli might have seen a save against 9. And that's often what happens when someone does something weird. Is like they saw the line you saw, and they saw something in it. And often they're correct, and you just missed something, and so they went for something else. And sometimes they're just wrong, right? And like they thought they saw something there, and it wasn't there. I have no idea what the case is here. I guess we'll look at the move that was actually played, though. 6 7 6 3 landing in 5 is not comboable. So Deli is currently down 6 4. And if he lands 6 7 6 3 and 5, if Midas goes 9, Deli will go in 5. He will be up 6 4. But Midas has 3 7 6 5 and 1 to tie. Deli controls anything in 4, but he doesn't control 1. He doesn't have a capture. If Midas goes 9 and Deli goes 5 6 5 6 and 5, then Midas can combo back with 3 7 6 5, and I don't think that's ever a win. Though maybe I should actually count it out. So I think Midas has to go 9 while keeping 3 7 6 5 in his hand. There, there. Yeah, that's 5 5. Okay. Stelly already has 2. Um, man, I don't know. Complicated game. This is a really tough rule set. This is a really tough rule set. All right. Well, again, we go off my expected path with 6 5 6 5 4. And it doesn't force him into any combos he doesn't want. That's a chaotic finish. This is one of the hardest structures of 3 moves left to calculate, and I think what you got to do is brute force it. But it's hard to brute force talking out loud. It looks like a tie to me. The kind of easy thing to do if you don't want to calculate is figure out which of your cards has 2 squares, and then play your other card in the third square to guarantee your card lands well. So, for instance, 5 6 5 6 is good in 1 and 5, so you can play 6 7 6 3 and 9, and that will tie, or better depending on what they do, but that will at least tie. Not saying that rule as a whole always leads to a tie, but like 6, 7, 6, 3, and 9 is thus an easy candidate move to check, and you can pretty quickly see that ties. They must block 5. If we were trying to set up 6, 7, 6, 3, I guess your other candidate move is 5, 6, 5, 6, and 9, because 9 is your worst square. And you usually just want to get rid of your worst square here. Your best chance to win is usually getting rid of the worst square. So I would think 9 is the most promising here, but I don't think it works. I want to bring up the solver on this one. I am flummoxed by what was going on. And I want to know if 9 was good, because 9 seemed promising to me, but I think there was probably some hold somewhere, right? I think, there was a bunch of options. It looked really promising, but also there's a decent chance there was a hold. Interesting game. One of the signs that this is a complicated rule set is just how frequently my evaluation has been flipping back and forth, or that my evaluations are just completely wrong. So I think after 7, at the start, this was really dangerous. Deli goes in 3, and this is losing. But it's one of those things where there's so many options against it, and the loss, incredibly, is 6, 5, 3, 7, and 1. Okay, no one but Seto is ever playing to win there. So in practice, this was not a losing move in 3. Midas plays 6, and Galagros in 9 did not win. There was a tie in 4. That's tough to find, but is findable once you're just looking at that position and having to find the tie. All right. And so our final moves this game are 6, 7, 6, 3, 9, 6, 5, 3, 7, 5, 5, 6, 5, 6, 1, Galagros Sweeper, and 3, 7, 6, 5 remaining. And we have our third tie of the match. All right, just gonna put in hands. These are access. All right, these are very complicated games. This rule set, I'm pretty happy not to be playing it. I think I would have a tough go here. All right, we'll pause the video, see if they go for a fourth.